Ready to go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special council meeting of June the 8th. I would like to ask council for approval of tonight's agenda. Moved by Councillor Ray, by Berger, seconded by Councillor Ray. Question?
Yes, I believe we're having a verbal report this evening, so on the Souk Horseshoe pitch.
Yes,
So
I
that should
had
be
asked that.
agended.
Sorry, I ran up the stairs. I'm out of breath.
Should
yes.
add it to the agenda.
I was just going to ask for that when we discussed that item, when we got to the part on the trail RA2.
Okay. All right, thank
So
you.
we can just add that in there. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so that moves us right into the public Q&A, question and comment period. I'll just open up the microphone then to anyone that has a comment or question of tonight's agenda.
Gail Hall, 2517 Souk River Road. And I would like to speak to the Souk River Road, which is now called a multi-use trail and parking area. So I'd like to ask how the bike path became a project, and I will give you how I think it got to be a project. And I question the legality of the process. The bike path was hatched from one letter from one taxpayer who is a business owner who stated that such a path would enhance the experience of his visiting guests as they could then ride their bike safely into Souk. That was the whole beginning of this. And that is how we started down this path, if you'll pardon I think it's a pun, but I'm not sure. So the sole purpose of his email was to introduce Souk Council to the availability of a grant. Many emails come into this municipal hall. I know I've sent my share. This one, however, was placed on the agenda on September the 8th of 2014. And it was under the heading of correspondence requiring action. And my question is, why? What made it so special? One email from one resident of Souk? How many of the public's emails are given this same treatment? And perhaps wrongly, I have a feeling of some kind of a conspiracy to make sure that this bike path became a reality. And granting assistance to business is, of course, a contravention of the community charter. And if this businessman wanted this trail because his guests would be much happier if they could safely ride into Souk, although I wouldn't want to try it on that trail, you have to take a look at that. So from there, and it was not, I'll make clear that was not this council, although 5 of you are still here. This was the council back in 2014, September. So with no other discussion, no previous identification of this project, we can only wonder why. And I'm still wondering. So public consultation was a requirement for submission of the application, and our application proudly states that yes, public consultation has taken place. We have one email from one businessman. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the consultation with the public. All and only. And I leave that with you. But the next one is a little more serious. CIPP guidelines for getting government grants. There are listed some non-cost shareable items. In other words, the grants do not apply to certain items. And those items, one is a cycling facility that contravenes the Motor Vehicle Act, i.e. facilities on one side of the road only. In other words, if we're staying to one side of the road, we do not qualify for funding. And that's right out of the guidelines. I do have them. So I think we need to take a look at that and find out unless you're meaning to move over to 2, and then we go back to the price that we were told the first night, and that was 300,000. So if we proceed, our costs could well exceed 180,000, because with the contract that you've listed for tonight, that's 37,000 added to our already 75,000, puts us over 100,000. And if we have to pay the whole shot because we don't qualify, now we're up to about 180,000. And this is all because one guest house owner wanted his clients to enjoy their bike ride into Souk. You have to return the grant. We have to put the project on hold. Some homework needs to be done by all concerned, and a much better performance is expected for the next time. Is there blame? Sure, there's plenty to go around, from staff to councillors and to the mayor, past mayor, maybe present mayor. Right now, the job is to fix the mess you've made and not make it worse with costs ballooning out of control. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Next speaker, please.
Loretta Deutscher, 7026 Wright Road. My apologies, Mayor and Council. This item is not on the agenda. I wish to draw your attention to the fact that the elevator is not working, but at this time I would sincerely like to thank Tina and Bonnie, who have helped me with this elevator issue 4 times. And to you, I'm extremely grateful. And thank you for allowing me to bring this to your attention.
Thank you for coming. Are there other members of the public?
Ellen Lewis, 5526 Souk Road. I've also sent an email to all the councillors before in regard to the bike path, and as Mr. Hall has said, there was no public consultation. There is no need, in my opinion, that we are even spending this kind of money, or that we even ask for a grant. People have been using that path and coming down off of there, down Kirby and onto the Goose for about 15, 20 years. So it's not an issue. So I don't know why we've got this grant happening and why we're having this, why it's even happening. So I would ask that we just give the money back and put it to work on better things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. Is this council standing by its last motion with regards to landscaping adjacent to 6519 Steeplechase?
Mr. Skupowicz, I don't believe that item is on tonight's
You're right, but I
agenda.
wasn't given the opportunity to address the report last week, so this is my only option to call into and this is a public Q&A question period, correct?
4 items pertaining to tonight's agenda, but there will be an opportunity for you when that meeting's minutes are being adopted for you to speak to it then, because we're not adopting those minutes tonight.
When are those minutes going to be adopted?
That'll be at the next meeting, which is on
June 22nd?
27th. That's when we'll be adopting, 22nd, pardon me. Yes, and then at that time we'll be adopting all those minutes, so you could speak to that item at that time.
But if there's anything that I'm going to change, I basically don't have any opportunity to change it before
You
June
could
22nd.
send an email to all of council if you like.
Okay.
Thank you. The agenda this evening is the special council meeting that is noted here, so any items that you wish to speak with must be with what's on the agenda.
Good night. My subject is not the agenda, but it's overdue because it's a mistake in the letter. And I would like council to approve the correction of our letter, the letter that you provided to us, that we really thank you. We never ask for money. And in the letter says that we are asking for further funding. And we would like you, the council, to give authorization for the secretary to provide us a letter with the right request that we provided council, please.
Okay, so Ms. Dominguez, this is the same thing where that letter pertains to a couple of meetings ago, but that was brought to my attention, so we'll be just striking that line from that letter, and we'll
Perfect.
send you a revised one. But just a reminder that what council resolved was to send you an updated version of a letter of support that was sent previously. That's what council resolved to do, so that is what the letter will be reading as.
Yeah, I understand, but it needs to
Okay,
reflect the truth.
that's all. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank
Okay. Any other speakers this evening?
Yeah, my name is Carl Linnell, 6930 Sellers Drive. I'm also the president of Sioux Community Association. This is to do with the horseshoe pit. Sioux River Campground offered 4 horseshoe pits that were offered to the Horseshoe Club when they first started. The club turned it down. They said they needed a site for 24 horseshoe pits, an area for a clubhouse, and a fenced area to socialize in. We're sorry, but we don't have the area that large for them. We have since used this area for campsites, or a portion of it. The Horseshoe Club had a small group then of less than 10 members. I don't know how many they have now. I don't think very many. Now, they say that the Fred Millen Park has public washrooms. They're not public. They're owned by us. They're privately owned by the Sioux Community Association. The Horseshoe Club has approached the Community Association to allow them to use our bathrooms. We have agreed to let them use them at a cost. No decision's been made on the cost, and there has not been a contract signed. Our concern is that, especially in the soccer season, games are starting and ending every hour. Many of these kids are little guys running around, getting excited to get to the car to get going home and running across that road. This backing out on the road there's going to be somebody killed out there. We had the parking lot on the other side. 90% of the people drive into the parking lot and aim outwards. So when they're going to come out, the game's over, they're leaving, they drive out on the road so they can see what they're doing, not backing out. It's just a dangerous thing. It's the same thing for the slow pitch people. There's a lot of people playing down there. There isn't quite enough parking on our side of the road. They park over there. It's just parks. This is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. If we get the grant, which is sounding like maybe we're standing a good chance. We've got through Victoria and everywhere else. This all-weather field is going to be used all year round, and we're going to rent it out to other clubs to come out and use for practice play games and everything else, because we got to make money. So this field is going to be used basically 24 hours a day, because the lights are going to be on it and everything. So this parking lot is going to be pretty busy. Now, in the last week or two, they have put a fence up, the Horseshoe people. You can't even get down to look at your property or our property to look at the wildlife. This is apparently why you bought this property, so people could go down and look. They've blocked all that entrance off. The way I look at it, put the Horseshoe Club down by the Girl Guide camp, and then you got a parking lot for us, you got a parking lot for you guys, and you got a parking lot for the Horseshoe Club. As I say, they have now blocked your city park. Where am I here? Lost it. I got lost, sorry. Anyway, I'm just going to close it off here. Why have we as property owners been notified about meetings with what's going on across the road? Isn't this a thing you have to do? I found out about this afternoon around 4 o'clock. This is not right as far as I'm concerned. You got to notify people when things are happening. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linnell. Are there any other members wishing to speak?
How's it going? Herb Haldane, 3118C Otter Point Road. Part of the reason these guys are coming here tonight is because there's supposed to be a relationship built between community association, council, and so on. They own all the sports fields in the town, other than Sea Park, which is owned by Souk and regional area. If we want a relationship where these guys keep looking after the baseball fields and the soccer fields, which is what they do right now, and they provide that to the district of Souk, without any issues, without any problems, and without asking for much. We get money. They get money for the community hall, but they don't get money for the fields and so on. And they're being taken care of by ball and soccer, and those people pay for the water, they pay for the mowing, and so on. So if there's going to be an issue with parking across the road, which is going to be used by half a dozen horseshoe guys, then there should be consultation at the very least. The consultation, when I sat where you people are sitting, wasn't done last time around, and it's not being done now. So if the relationship's supposed to stay good between the community association, who provide sports fields for the community at no charge to the district or the taxpayers, then we need to develop a relationship here that works for everybody. Right now, everything's going sideways, and it's going to get worse. But it can be rectified right now because somehow the horseshoe people, if you want to look after them, can be either moved to the side or moved somewhere else. If you go down there and look, that fence is neither legal or safe. It's chicken wire and a bunch of rebar pounded in the ground. It's not at any specific height. It's got no, even if you're on a construction site, you still have to put protective balls on top of the rebar when you pound it in the ground. So right now, if it's a liability on the district because you allowed it to happen, and you know that it's happened, and it's still going on down there, nobody's done anything about it. The other thing is, if you've given them an area, I still haven't seen any mapping on it, and I've asked on numerous occasions with different councillors about mapping. Well, it's not been surveyed, so do they just pace it off by their footsteps and say, this is where we'd like it to go, and then they put a fence up, and then at some point the district agrees to it? There should be proper mapping. Everybody should know. There should be proper signage. There should have been proper public process for the entire thing. Nobody's looking here to try and create some sort of a big animosity trail, but that's what will happen when soccer gets involved and slow pitch gets involved in baseball. I talked to Mike Hicks today, who would not ever come here because he's trying to develop a relationship with Souk, but this is also his deal too. You guys are going after a $1.7 million grant that's going to include rugby fields, going to include hardball fields, soccer, and so on. So there's going to be a lot more users than there even is presently right now, and the community association is allowing their property to be used for this whole program. And then Sea Park's going to operate it because they're going to take care of the artificial turf field component. So if this is the relationship building we're looking for, we're going about it the wrong way, that's all. And the public will soon start asking the questions once they realize there's nowhere to park down there once they go for it, and we'll end up like the boat launch all over again. We don't want to be looking at this a year down the road and wish we'd have done something different, and we enter into a big, huge contract agreement with the horseshoe guys that we can't get out of for a number of years. So I think it needs to have more public consultation, and we need to look at this, with everybody involved. We need to get everybody to the table so new ideas can pop up. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Haldane. Other speakers? Is anyone speaking for the first time? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Lurs, thank you.
I just wanted to say, along with that bike park trail, that trail where you want to put the bike park runs right alongside of the properties where the ball fields are. And as we all know, you drive down Jacqueline Road and you've got that bike trail. It's a dangerous, stupid place to put it. So you'd have the same situation here. So now you've got people backing out, bikes going by on a bike trail, because that trail is going to go right past the parking lot there. It's just waiting for a disaster. I really think you need to look over this and stop the process and look at what you're doing, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous already, and as just been said about the horseshoe pitch, and I saw the fence up there too, and I thought, where's everybody supposed to park? But now you put a bike trail there too? Not good.
Thank you, Ms. Lurs. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll move into tonight's agenda, starting with B1, bylaw number 618, Souk Core Sucor Sewer Specified Area Amendment Bylaw 147-24. It's a Sucor Sewer Specified Area Proposed Boundary Adjustment for 7033 Wright Road. And we have a staff report. Actually, in the beginning, there is some supplemental information that I did not include when we called the meeting to order. There was a map that was left off, so if I could just get council to accept the supplementary information, please. Moved by Councillor Pearson, second by Councillor Logan. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So Ms. Nelson, are you or Mr. Dillabaugh leading off on the staff report? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The district has received a petition for local service area enlargement for the Sucor Sewer Specified Area on Wright Road, as shown on the map on page 2 of the report. The sewer main is already, the force main is already installed in Wright Road. It was installed as part of the Wright Road development of the small lots that you see along the north side of the map. The south side of the road was accommodated by this force main, so the services were stubbed out for those lots. And the owners of the properties on the south side were sent a letter saying that once they were ready to join, they could make a petition to the district to do so, which would then go towards council, as this one is for inclusion. And that's it.
Questions from council about the report? Councillor Berger?
I'll move first reading.
Okay, actually, the first one is that we received the petition.
Okay, received
If you
petition.
mind backing up to the receive.
Sure.
Okay, second by Councillor Ray. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, and now would you like to go ahead with first
Move
reading?
first reading.
Second by Councillor Berger. Any comments or questions? Councillor Pearson?
I just wanted to know about the financial impacts.
Could you turn on your microphone, please?
I was just curious about the financial impacts. Is this up to date, the $2,800? Just does it? I thought that we were talking about that increasing as time went on to capture the 550 or whatever. Wasn't that supposed to be adjusted yearly?
Mr. Dillabaugh?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, that will still be coming forward, but at this time it is still the $2,800.
So we're within that catchment area of...
That's correct, and we will be bringing forward a report at a future date to look at that and address that as per the council direction previously.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of first reading? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Moved second reading by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Berger. Any questions? Was that a question? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And third reading? Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Our next piece under RA1, reports requiring action, is a development permit for 2700 Sun River Way. And we have the materials as well as a staff report.
Madam Mayor?
Oh, pardon me. Yes,
Yep.
Go ahead.
So again, I have to excuse myself as a perception of bias, which could be a conflict of interest, as my husband is a contractor for CETA, which is the general contractor for the Sun River development.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Berger. Are you going to be in the fire lounge?
Oh, let's go.
Just so we can find you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so leading off, Mr. Dillabaugh, are you doing the staff report?
I'll turn this one over to Ms. Nelson as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nelson.
Through you again, Madam Mayor. The applicant has applied for a development permit on the old school site at 2700 Sun River Way. It's the map is shown on page 15 of the report of that area. The DP was for the purposes of subdivision and protecting the environmentally sensitive areas within the subdivision. The appropriate conditions of the permit are included in the recommendations that you can see on page 11, and hopefully I can answer any questions that council may have.
So comments or questions from council? I see that the applicant is in the room. Do you have any comments or questions? Not at this time, okay. All right, so there is a recommendation here, and that is that council issue the development permit for PLN 00912-928 for 27 Sun River Way, legally described, and it lists the two PDIDs for the purposes of environmental protection and subdivision into single-family lots in accordance with Schedules A through D, with several conditions A through E is noted here. Is there a councillor prepared to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Ray. Any discussion on the motion or the recommendation as stated? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Move on. I'll just go and get Councillor Berger. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to RA2, which is the design and construction management for the Suk River Road multi-use trail and parking areas award of contract. So there is a staff report, and we have also received feedback from council about getting more information about what's happening at the Horseshoe Pit site. And then there was going to be information coming forward to the June 15th Committee of the Whole, but since that meeting is not occurring, we just asked to get sort of a verbal update this evening from staff, so we have sort of an understanding on what's transpired. So, Mr. Dillabaugh, will you be leading off on this?
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you.
Is it council's wish to get that verbal update first and then deal with this report, or deal with the report and then the verbal update?
We'd like the verbal update first.
Okay.
Yes.
So just further to your request and an update on the horseshoe pitch, as was requested by council. And my apologies for not bringing something forward in writing this evening. It was initially, as you mentioned, going to come forward on the 15th, but to provide a oral or verbal update today. The Horseshoe Pitch organization and the district entered into, as you certainly are aware, license to occupy, for lack of better terms, for a portion of the Suk River Road property. That portion and that area is listed in that agreement. So the fencing that has been put up, that is temporary fencing to allow the organization to work on and build the pitches. The intended design right now is for 6 pits in that area. The area is it's a few meters bigger than the allocated area that was designed, and we can certainly have a discussion with them, but to allow them a little bit of room as well for equipment in that area to provide that construction. As I say, the fencing that is there currently is temporary. There will be permanent fencing that will be set up. It will still be available to the public, but as you can imagine, with horseshoes being thrown around and the like, permanent fencing around the area, as was discussed when bringing forward and entering into that agreement, will be set up at that time. As far as parking is concerned, and we hear this evening that parking, and I don't necessarily disagree that parking can be an issue down there. That property is ALR land, and it cannot be used as a parking lot. The part that can be used as a parking lot, however, is the road right-of-way along Suk River Road. And as part of this application and using the horseshoe pitch, but not directly related to that, but more related to the design and the construction of the path and the trail, we are going to be looking at and surveying so that there is parking along Suk River Road, angled in parking along there. But as I say, the rest of the park, being ALR land, cannot be used as a parking lot. And that was actually never the direction from council at the June 25th, 2012 meeting, was to authorize staff to work with the Slow Pitch Association to construct temporary angled parking fronting Suk River Road Park. So the intent of that was never to use the entire area, the entire park as parking. It was to use the area fronting the road as angled parking and temporarily. And that was on June 25th, 2012. So that's where we're at this evening. The report coming forward is for the design and construction management of the proposed trail along Suk River Road that the district previously was awarded the grant. I just wanted to clarify that, as it was mentioned earlier that perhaps we hadn't been awarded it. We have been awarded that grant, and we have the ministry has come in and discussed, and based on their discussions, we qualify and are able to move forward with that grant based on this construction as well. So if there are any questions from council, I'd be happy to take them at this time. And between Ms. Nelson and myself, we'll do our best to answer them.
Councillor Ray, then Pearson.
Thank you. The reason I'm concerned is when I supported the horseshoe pitch going where it was originally slated to go with the council from 2008 to 2011. One of the things that I agreed and I had asked and I was assured of, I believe, that we were assured of, was that maximizing the ability to park there and consultation with the Souk Community Association moving forward. And I guess I'm concerned that where they're putting it, I don't think that maximize when we have the problem with parking that we have, and I hear what you're saying about ALR land, but they've blocked the ability to go down to the estuary there. There's been no plan in terms of how they're going to set it up, like who's behind setting this out on that piece of property? Is it the horseshoe pitch? I have concerns if they're the ones that are laying it out. There's been no surveying. I'm a little surprised, I got to say, to see that fence go up, especially because they sat here when I made the comment that I expected there to be consultation with the Souk Community Association. And in my understanding, there's been none. So yes, it just seems that it won't go away, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but the way it sits now, it doesn't seem to work.
Councillor Pearson, then Berg.
Yes, and thank you through the chair. And yes, Councillor Ray, you're hitting on a couple of key points. When we agreed to go back to there, my understanding was that we were going to make it the least intrusive and everybody to get use. And now it seems like that this area that they've selected, I don't know how it got selected. I don't recall us voting or approving anything for a specific area. I was under the impression, and my comments were, put it down to the Brownie camp as far as we can, because there was a nice area down there. When I say the Brownie camp, it's at the north end of that strip, where it could fit in nicely, and then we would be still maintaining the parking. Until the ALR land comes along and tells us not to park on the land, we've put gravel and all kinds of things on there, and there's an expected benefit of having this gravel and things on there that we worked with the community association. Somehow that appeared as well. But I'm kind of confused of why this is in almost the worst possible area. That's my feeling about where this fence is now. I have no problems with the Horseshoe Club, getting this piece of property. I guess we've all kind of beat that around enough that we all had our open opinions. But it seems to be now in the worst location, and I'm troubled by that.
Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councillor Pearson and Councillor Ray, with the exception that I don't think this is the right location for the horseshoe pitch, and I voted against it from day one. My concerns are exactly what's been expressed, the location and how it hinders our park access. There's no park plan for that piece of land. Initially, it was supposed to be to protect the estuary and maybe have a nature hut. Now, where are we going to put that, and how are we going to utilize that? I'm concerned about surveying. I don't know when that was done or what that looked like. And I very well could have missed it. It could be in a minutes or agreed upon somewhere. But I think that that's something that we need to see. I would be completely in favor of this council having a sober second thought and looking at what particular use this is going to go forward. I mean, and again, I'm a bit passionate on one side because I just don't agree with it in this location. And Herb touched on the all-weather field. So the CRD, in conjunction with CPark, has put an application for a grant in. He has support letters from every single mayor in the CRD. And it was a short time frame grant. It doesn't look like a lot of other municipalities are applying for the same grant. All mayors have written support letters saying that they support Souk having an all-weather field. So they've called it the Field of Dreams. It was going to occupy soccer, ball, and softball. So right there, that shows us how busy that field is going to be. As far as parking goes with the ALR, I think that that's something that the municipality can do, seeing as how we own it, and we would like to protect the estuary. We'd like people to be able to go down there. I don't see why the ALR wouldn't allow us to use parking as a permitted use to use the estuary and to use the nature hut. So if we go back and look at Ellen's questions, if we Am I commenting on everything right now, or just horseshoe pitch? Because I have a few more comments. Okay, so I would like us to know the validity of Ms. Hall's comment with the trail being on one side of the road, if it's on one or two, and if that is a hindrance. I think that's something we should know. And then also on, sorry, I'm just going to load up where I left my previous notes. For the tendering, I'm just wondering how come there's not tendering prices in here. It says the 3 people that gave it in, and then it just has staff's ranking. And normally we see what the full tender was, this, an idea of how much each contractor was going to pay. So we don't know who's the most expensive and who's the least and what they're going to do for that scope. And also, is this, I'm asking lots of questions, so sorry. Was this a 50-50 grant? I can't remember. Okay, one more question then, and I'll let you answer them all. And then also this, in the report it says that the contractor will be, thank you, the contractor will be doing the tendering, and I take issue to that, so I won't support this agenda item because I take issue to the fact that the contractor will be doing tendering, and we just finished doing a fantastic job on Wadham's Way, using local contractors and getting in on time under budget. So without having the further information, and looking at the use across the road, I can't support this at this time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Berger. Maybe before moving on, Mr. Dillabaugh, can you just comment a bit on the grant and the ranking and just how it came to be with the contractor doing the tendering?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship, yes, it is a 50-50 grant. I'll cover that one off first because that's the one I remember first.
Okay.
And it's in our 5-year financial plan for this year in the capital plan, and our portion is to come from gas tax.
I think you'll need to speak up a bit, Mr. Dillabaugh.
Oh, sorry. As far as the ranking actually goes is based on price primarily. As far as the percentages, there's a number of other factors. The number one factor and gets 50% of the ranking is price. And so Herald Engineering was the low bid. And then the next lowest bid was J.E. Anderson. Those two were quite close. And WSP Group was significantly more price-wise. So hopefully that kind of covers off that question as well. As far as the grant itself, the ministry, as I mentioned earlier, has been in discussion with the district, and based on their discussions with us and the materials that have been submitted, they have confirmed that SUC has provided the program the necessary information and has followed all required processes in applying for funding under the Bike BC program, and that's from the ministry. So my apologies that's the reason why I'm looking at my phone. That's a direct quote from the ministry. So okay. I just wanted to touch on that as well.
So that speaks to, thank you. So the ministry has said to SUC, first of all, let's go back one step. Are we building this on both sides of the road or just one side of the road?
On one side of the road.
Okay, and so the ministry has said that that's okay. The picture, I'll give this to you. Ms. Hall just brought this to me.
Through you, Worship, if you can liken it to Wadham's Way, has a trail on one side of the road, and so will this be. This will not be right along the roadway either.
So perhaps we can get into more of the design and all that after. I just want to hit, pardon me, I do want to come to that piece in a bit. I just wanted to hit the financial pieces first, and then we'll get more into the design and the site-specific stuff after. Did you have a follow-up question?
No, I think we touched on...
Oh, the piece was about the contractor doing the tendering rather than the district doing the tendering.
The intent on that is not... in some ways, again, I'll liken it to Wadham's Way, and because Councillor Berger brought it up, we had a contractor tender that as well through our project manager, through McElhaney. And so that would be a similar process. The intent is not to have an outsider or somebody outside of SUC do the work. It is for them to project manage that contract and that agreement and manage the process from the design and right through the construction management. So that's the intent there, for them to provide project management services on our behalf.
Okay, sorry. Just one last quick question then, just while I have your attention. So then the parking on the other side of the road, because this does tie into the Horseshoe Pitch and where they have their temporary fencing or what have you. Sorry, I've got lots of thoughts in my head. So number one, was that area surveyed, or was the Horseshoe Pitch just allowed to sort of pick a portion that would work best for them?
Perhaps I can refer to Ms. Nelson on that one.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll answer that question. The area was not surveyed yet. That's why there's just temporary fencing up. The temporary fencing does match up very closely, though, to the sketch that was attached to the use management and maintenance agreement. So it is in the location that was agreed to by council as part of that agreement. It's in the general area, and it is roughly the size that's there. Like Mr. Dillabaugh said, slightly larger to accommodate the the working on it. The idea is that the surveying would actually be done as part of the project that we're talking about on page 97, should that project be authorized to proceed. If not, then we would survey it separately.
Okay. So seeing that these obviously run in together with this, because there's going to be, there's the mention of parking within this particular grant as well on that side of the road, right? And is that just the right-of-way or on our municipal park?
In the right-of-way. Ms. Nelson, is that correct?
Yeah, if we may as well talk design for a second.
Yeah.
The idea of the multi-use trail, and we call it multi-use trail and parking areas, the idea would be that the whole area within the road right-of-way, especially along the area in question here with the parking, would be surveyed. And then the proponent would come up with the best plan for possibly enhancing the parking and putting a trail in the proper location. Could be a multi-use trail, could be separated trail on both sides. It just depends on where the room is, where the drainage will allow. That final detailed design would have to be determined once we know what we're dealing with on the site, once we've surveyed everything.
Okay. Microphone.
Absolutely.
They sort of go hand in hand then, because if we're looking at the multi-use trail and any parking use, we really do have to be talking about the Horseshoe Pitch location. So, I mean, I'd like to make a motion that we completely break the contract, but that's not supported at this table. But I think that what we need to do at this table is actually look at the location of that and look at our contract to see if there's any room or how we can move that, because it's going to be a hindrance.
I think for myself, where I'm a bit confused is that the order of operations just seems to be a bit out. Like, I know that council supported the agreement, the license to occupy, with the area hatched off. And then at the same time, since last September, the bike grant has been coming out. So in terms of then identifying the area as a whole, so it just seems that we would have that in place, and then we would see this area is best fit for the horseshoes, here's where parking's going to go, and this is where it is. So I think that's the intent of tonight's report, would be to get the consulting entity to look at the whole thing, because both pieces have been endorsed. Like, we supported, I think, the horseshoes in January, February, and then I think the trail piece came forward after that, though, when we endorsed that. So that's where they're out of sync. But in the meanwhile, the fencing piece has happened, and I think that's what's throwing the order out and why we're sort of having these comments. Councillor Casper, then Ray?
And Kevin Pearson.
Okay, Casper, then Pearson, then Ray. Oops.
It's all right. What I need to know is, and this all boils down to process, and I hate using that term, but I was under the distinct impression that we were actually going to do some survey work so we could see some preliminary options that would have the least impact on the community association property, and also being mindful of what would be the safest. I think we all agree that the safest thing to do from what was initially submitted to the province as part of the grant application and the preliminary layout of how that trail was going to work, that we're not going to cross at Kirby Road at Souk River Road. I think everybody looked at that, and this is not a safe situation because of the sight lines and all that. And I know our engineer actually, when we had a presentation, we all discussed those types of issues. But I was under the impression that we were going to get some survey work done. There was going to be consultation with the community association. We were going to look at parking issues on both sides of the street and have the least impact of that multi-purpose trail on parking and the least safety, like to have the highest safety considerations. And I was also hoping that we would look at the option of putting the trail or a portion of it through the parkland that we own on the west side of Souk River Road as to opposed on the east side of Souk River Road. And in my mind, I think it's a political decision as to where that trail goes, not an engineer's decision and not a consultant's decision. I want them to bring forward the information and some facts so that we can actually have an A and B option with public consultation and then make a decision. Otherwise, we're going to be spinning in circles here. And I don't think anybody's going to be happy. The story will be, you ruin the parking situation, and people could care less whether you built a multi-purpose trail or not. Because that will be the negative thing. And you know what it's like when it becomes negative, then we're not going to see any benefit. And I support the trail. I felt confident that what had been done was done right, and we've had confirmation that the province says everything is okay. So now I want to move on. And now if it means that if we're going to hire somebody to go out and do all the survey work so I can see lines presented on here and that other people in the community can see it, then we have to make a political decision as to where it's going to go, A or B, and how much it's going to cost in the end run. So is it possible to do that? I don't know if staff can answer me that question.
Mr. Dillenbaugh? It's formal. To me, it's getting clarity on what the process is. I agree. And I think I'm wondering, is that the intent of the recommendation here? Is that what we're going to expect? In which case, what do we do with the horseshoes in the meantime? But yeah, I think that's what everyone's kind of waiting for, so we can roll it out, because right now that's kind of in the dark. Do you have some comments back?
Through you, Your Worship, and I'll pass it over to Miss Nelson to correct me if I overstep saying something or I can't get kicked from this far away. So that would be the intent. I believe that would be the intent, is for them to do the survey work and provide their recommendation as to the best way to locate the trail and work in parking into the road right away, and if there are other options there as well, to look at all of that, and then from there go on to the construction management and all of that, and tendering the work, and all of that. But that would be the first step, is for them to do that survey work and then go forward and look at what their recommendation of the best option, and certainly that can come back to council, and ultimately council can make a decision based on that. But Ms. Nelson can correct me if I'm saying something that
I was going to say, the only thing I would interject would be the coordination and the consultation with the Sioux Community Association as well as the CPark. I've already been in touch with CPark, but obviously not the Sioux Community Association at this point. But that was definitely the intent based on the direction that we received from council in March. So the idea was for this project to be in the public domain, which would be a review of the parking, the consultation, where the trail would be able to go and all that. And then the Sioux Community Association, I always understood, had their dedicated area and they could go ahead and do their thing as long as the parking was dealt with separately in the public domain. That's because parking was never allowed within the park itself back then or now, at that time. I mean, definitely council can.
Is a trail permitted in the ALR land?
I don't think so. The ALR only gave an exclusion for the horseshoe pitches at that time that I'm aware of.
Because that would be one worth asking for, because then the trail could be on our parkland. It would go through that area and then across. So that would be a good option to pursue, so that that opens up more road allowance for parking.
If council wishes, we can certainly ask that question of the ALR.
The other one would be to see if a portion of, because it's flat and cleared, and people will park in it anyway, to permit parking in a designated area, because it would take a lot to what else, people will park in it anyway. So rather than just doing it illegally, I think it's a case of creating more parking, because with the all-weather field, and I feel that we do stand a really good chance of receiving that grant for Souk. There will be all year-round activity there, and so any way to improve upon the parking, I think, is a reasonable use for that area. Councillor Pearson, then Ray.
And I think that, thank you, Councillor Casper, for your comments, because I think that's exactly what needs to happen, is the process needs to be nailed down. But included in that, I didn't hear the word, is go back and negotiate with the horseshoe pitch at the best location and the best licensed space to occupy in there, because that all has to be part of that consultation. It can't be just, we're going to talk about the trail. It has to be, the whole package has to be talked about in unison. But I did have another question about this at the bottom of this recommendation today. And it talks about the 3 companies responded to the request for proposals. And then the second line, or the second sentence in here, says the proposals were evaluated by staff based on performance measures such as work planning. It says such as work planning, historical performance, and fees. If all 3 of these are qualified, we should be qualifying our providers, our service providers, in advance, and then the price should become the determination. I don't like this wording that says such as. So, and I'm seeing Herald Engineering as, this is a public document that says 98%. What does that mean to me? That they're 98% okay? Like, either they get the contract or they don't. If these are all 3 qualified, then why are we rating them? And this is not a very clear process for me. I think that we should, this is a scary piece of document here, the way it's written. I haven't seen that type of format before, so I'm not sure why we're rating people against percentages. It's A, if they're qualified, yes or no. If it's yes, then the price becomes the determination, right? We don't always take somebody based on price, but again, this is a strange way to write it. 98% versus 93%, so the 98 gets it. Who's the 100% supplier? Like, I don't understand this process. So anyway,
Mr. Dillabaugh, can you talk a bit about that, please?
Through your worship, there are a number, and those are the main 3. A number of factors that are outlined in the RFP that was sent out to qualify and rank the respondents that brought forward a proposal, and they include the work planning, the quality of the proposal, the history with the District of Souk, and each one of those is scored, as well as price. So price is also scored, and then we determine, and the bidders know what that breakdown is as part of the RFP process. Each one of those is scored, and by a group, not just by one individual on staff. We have a review committee for these, and each one of those is scored, and then it's compared to the total score. So as you can imagine, it's not likely that somebody would get 100%. So that's the reason why the number 1 respondent got 98%. You could, the other way to do it is to mark that, then that is now the new 100%, and then drop everyone based on that. But it's all based on the total and where you fall in there. So Herald Engineering, and as I say, fee ends up being the largest portion of the scoring grid. But as you mentioned, Councillor Pearson, fee is not always the only factor that is looked at. right? So there are other factors that are looked at as well. So that's the reason why it's written out this way. I assume we could have put the price on there as well. And if council wishes going forward, we can put the scoring as well as the price, then at least you know what the price of the other bids were as well. I hope that helps clarify it a little bit, at least.
Going forward, I would recommend that the pricing is there, because that's where, we're always mindful, like, okay, well, what is the breakdown, what is the cost? So I think that's something that council would like to see.
I can assure you in this case, Harold was the lowest price.
Okay, thank you.
I think it just appears to be subjective, and there's subjective criteria here that's not clear to me, and that's, so, thank you.
Councillor Berger? Oh, pardon me, sorry, Councillor Ray. Sorry, thank you for that.
My apologies, Your Worship. So I sort of divided this into two pieces. I need to go back to the horseshoe pitches. So I appreciate it may have been drawn up in the agreement in terms of the space, but in terms of the whole piece, when I think back to it, when we were speaking, I think it was pretty clear, and I trusted that that would be what would be reflected in that agreement, was one, that the horseshoe pitches, and if I think I remember exactly what I said, it was the horseshoe pitches should be situated to maximize the parking and not the view. And the second piece to that was that in terms of that planning, that the community association would be consulted. So now the Horseshoe Club was here a couple of weeks ago before the Community Grant Committee asking for funds because they didn't have any money to build the pitches. So I'm a little surprised that they would be at that point that they're ready to build pitches now. So I don't think the taxpayer should be on the hook for any survey or anything that relates to that property. I think the horseshoe pitch, and I could have this wrong, but this is my thinking. The horseshoe pitch, if they want to put the pitches there with that understanding, then they should get somebody and they should pay for somebody to develop that plan and then come back to us. I was very clear myself with the Horseshoe Club, no more taxpayer money. And the second piece to that is back to what Mrs. Hall mentioned in terms of the application, the public consultation piece. If that was a requirement, to be honest with you, I do not remember us having a consultation with the public. There was a lot of pressure to meet a deadline with that application grant. As a matter of fact, if I remember, we heard it came on the agenda at the end of August, and we had to have it in by September the 15th, or something like that. So I am a process person, and if we've missed a piece, then that gives me concern because I'm always advocating the importance of process. The second piece is that when I agreed, for me personally, when I agreed to look at doing this bike path, the cost was we were talking was $75,000. Now adding on the $37,117, we're now up to $112,000. So I recognize that it's sort of that project management piece, but that was not what I was agreeing to when I supported the lane. And then you layer all of that with the fact that we have problems with parking, the horseshoes, the bike lane, the all-weather fields. It's getting a little convoluted, and I have that vision as Mr. Haldane said. We're going to be right back in the same position we were that we are with the boat launch. So there's a number of pieces there. I don't know if you can answer any of them.
Well, I think when we discussed, if I may, Mr. Dillabaugh, the BRIGHT grant in March, I believe, that the project cost was about $155, and then part of that went into our financial plan with the other part being the grant. So that was where that came in.
No, this is an additional $37,000 for the project management of it.
Is that not included in the 150? Are you asking for? I thought that was part of the that the budget is 155 and this 37 is a part of that 155.
Through your worship, no, Councillor Ray's interpretation of that is more accurate.
Oh, okay.
The 37 is on top of the 155. The additional to that as well, though, is the work and the additional work related to the parking, and that was council's direction as well. And so there is some cost to us going forward with that, and that was never a part of the bike grant and the application and all of that. So that is a part that, and yes, they do integrate with each other, but that is to address and look at the parking issue down there and hopefully come up with the best solution related to the parking. There would be some cost to that, regardless of whether this is looking after the bike construction as well. The other thing that's worth noting is looking at pricing is a general rule of thumb is 20% of the construction value for this service, these services. So we're right around that area as far as the costing on it. And as I say, an added bonus or scope of economies of scale in tying the two together is this will also address the parking issue that council wishes us to look at in that case. But it is in addition to the 155. There is budget in another area in the capital fund to cover this cost as well. So we do have the budget to cover it.
Councillor Berger. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. So I'll break it into my two little pieces too, similar to Councillor Ray. In light of the lack of park plan that we have and lack of surveying, I think that we need to look at that before we agree where a multi-use trail is going to go, because you're exactly right, Mayor, that parking is going to hinder that. So I think that decisions need to be made on that property before we can actually go ahead. I also agree with Councillor Ray in that if there's no funds to build immediately, I don't feel that there should be fencing on a public park, because it does hinder getting down to the estuary. As for tonight's recommendation, I can't support the recommendation without seeing costs, contracts, mapping, as well as the increased cost. There's just not enough in this report for me to expend taxpayer dollars.
Councillor Casper?
So my question, I guess, is there any way that the district has the ability to actually go and get the surveying done, which was, I'm assuming, factored into the tenders, and sort of extract that, or to get that initial work done?
Through your worship, we can certainly I can't think of it won't be a tender, but I can't think of the procure survey work for that area on its own, if that's council's wish to do that first.
And just further to that, then I'm assuming, based on what staff advised us earlier, is that those were factors that were going to be part of the job duties of whoever's going to get this work. And so can we extract that amount out of the contract?
I'd have to look at the wording of the contract and the tender as to whether we can just do that portion or whether we have to award the entire thing. And if we had to award the entire thing, we may have to just go out and, as I say, and procure just the survey work if that's council's wish. But we can certainly look at that, and if that's council's wish to just do the survey work, then we can do one or the other depending on the wording.
Well, what I'm hearing around the table, and council can let me know otherwise, is that we really need to know, we need more information for this area. So it's kind of like some sort of drawing that shows, here's the road allowances, here's where the park starts, here's where the community association lands are, and where could we start placing these things in greater detail? Because I think if we didn't do this and said, okay, you know what, we're not doing the grant and we're not going to do the horseshoes, we're going to break that contract, the parking in that area is still a complete mess. It's still an unsafe area and it's a total disaster. And so with more people coming to that area, it's only going to exacerbate the situation. So we need to have a sense of what is going on. And I think it's just because some areas have been cleared, it's like, okay, like if you go down there, am I on the ALR land? Am I in the roadway? Where exactly am I? And where does this all start? And then I think just in case with the horseshoes, I mean, they want to be successful in their project as well. It's just we need to bide some time here, and there may be a better placement for them once we understand what's going on in the area. Because when we discussed this, there were just some pictures, but I was sort of expecting to see just a bit more detail so we understand where things land. Is that sort of what I'm hearing? So I think that goes back to what Councillor Casper is asking, is for a survey of the area. And then I think it's like, okay, let's come back with that, and then we'll look at sort of what our next pieces are.
If I may, Your Worship, that is the next step.
Okay.
If we move forward with this report this evening, that is the next step. That will be the next step.
So that is the 37,000.
It is a portion of that 37,000.
A portion of that
yes.
37.
But understanding that if we aren't going to build, so beyond that, so that's the first step to get to that stage. The next step is we have the grant that we applied for and that we've got. The decision has to be, are we going to go forward with that or are we not? And if we are going to go forward with that, then we might as well do this, because this will take us to that next step, depending on what the decision is there that's made there. We're going to have to do that work next after we get the survey work and that information anyways, if we're going to move forward with that. If we're not going to, then yes, we just do the survey work and we do the parking and we give the grant back. Those are kind of the two options.
I think it's just a case of not committing to, like, if we're, you know, okay, well, the person's going to get 37,000, regardless of what we choose to do. We want to be able to do pieces of it and cover off those expenses without committing to 37 when we only required, say, 7,000 of that work. I don't want to, you know, sign off a check on something because we changed direction, say. And there is support for the trail. I think it's just there's a lack of clarity where it's going to go and how it's going to go and where it's all going to line up. And that's where it's, you know, committing to something when we don't know where we're going to end. And I think because parking is just problematic in so many areas, we actually want to be ahead of the curve and not after it. Councillor Ray, Councillor Berger?
If I can add, I think one of the things that I would like to see, and I'm not sure when we talk about the survey, would that be for the entire piece of property that would include where the horseshoe pitches? Not necessarily where the pitches go, but how everything would look in relation to the area that is provided to the Horseshoe Club?
Perhaps I can refer that to Ms. Nelson.
So the survey of the actual horseshoe pitch area was included, and as you say, that would be in relation to where the entrance or the exits or the fences or that would be. But there wasn't, in this current proposal, there wasn't a whole lot of detail within the park itself to see if there was other options for trails. So that would be the only link out of the whole discussion that would be missing.
If I can, a follow-up comment. I would like to see the whole thing. Okay, we got three things. We've got the horseshoe pitch, we've got the parking, and we've got the trail. And doing piece here and piece there gives me no sense of vision. And we have the estuary.
That's right. And that's where I think, if I may, Councillor Ray, that this recommendation is to do that in entirety and to cover all that off. Is that correct, Mr. Dillaval?
Again, I'll refer to Ms. Nelson, but I don't believe it doesn't refer in detail to the parkland itself as it is proposed right now.
Well, I was thinking sort of at the
as
top
a comment,
of it. Yeah.
I'm agreeing with Councillor Berger. I don't support going any further until we get our ducks in order about what the area is going to look like. And if that means just doing the survey piece so we can see what it looks like, then we'll be able to make an informed decision as to where the trail goes, whether we do the trail, where we put the horseshoe pitches, where we can put the parking. This piecemeal piece just is confusing, and I think we need to get our ducks in order before we make a decision.
Okay, so I thought what I heard is that this is to do the whole thing, but it's not then. I'm obviously missing something here. Yeah.
If I may, Your Worship, this is to do everything except for the detailed design on the park itself. Okay. If that's what council wishes, then we'd have to certainly go further into that as to what the detail in the park itself is. This is for the design, parking, how the entrance into or out of the parkland itself. Because we're talking about the parkland itself as well as the road right-of-way as two separate pieces of land. And so this is for a detailed design of the road right-of-way and the parking as well as the into and out of. But if what council wants is a detailed design for the park itself, then we'd have to go beyond that and go bigger. So
That would
that's
be
where
like
I
a
need,
whole
that's what I need
parkland.
clarity as to what does council actually want?
Okay.
Because I'm a bit confused right now too, to be honest.
Okay, all right, it's two of us.
Okay.
Councillor Berger, then Pearson.
Okay, so I'll keep it super simple. So if I look at just the recommendation, it's asking us to approve Herald Engineering as a successful proponent under the request for proposals for the design and construction of the Suk River Trail. I don't know what information was in the request for proposal. None of that's a part of our agreement today, so I don't know what we're getting into, and I don't know how much they're charging us. I see the rating, and that's lovely, and we've used the rating system before, but there's always been background information. And then it's asking us to authorize the mayor and chief administrative officer to sign a contract, which also isn't in front of me right now. So I don't know what that contract says either. So for me, I would like to make a motion to send this back to staff to bring more information to this table so we can actually know what we're talking about. Every time we make a comment, poor Mr. Dillabaugh is having to say, okay, it does say this, it doesn't say that. Well, if we knew that, we could have saved ourselves half an hour here. So for me, it's needing that information before we go further. And then the horseshoe pitch information, I think, is a separate motion on itself, and I think that we as a council need to direct staff to look at where we want the horseshoe pitch.
Okay,
Because
so
it is our parkland.
we'll start with your first motion then, and that is just to send this back to staff for more information to come. For more information was your motion, so is someone seconding that?
Second, I'll second
Seconded
that,
by
yeah.
Councillor Pearson. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Dillabaugh.
I just wanted to, through you, your worship, I just wanted to point out one thing. The price is in the report. It's in the last paragraph. It's $37,000.
Right, and again, I just was asking for the
So that's the
breakdown.
price of the preferred proponent.
Right.
And yes, we can give the other two. But
That would
just
be great.
so that clarity is, if you were to approve the recommendation, that would be the price.
So I think in terms of what more information looks like is the actual document for, if we could get what was sent out in the RFQ, the contract that council would be authorizing myself and the CAO to sign. The other question is the pricing breakdown. The other is, do we want some sort of a survey to come back, even if it's like something off of district GIS, like just some sort of overhead that shows the whole area, like it doesn't have to be, so we have something in front of us. Yeah, that just so we have something visual in color, perhaps, an overlay where you could see just some light. I think that would be a good piece to have. What other information would you like to receive? Councillor Pearson.
Well, I think, and I fully support this motion, but I also want it to include, we asked some questions tonight. Are we allowed to park on ALR land? That has to be part of that question. Whether there can be an overall approach to the all-weather field, what benefit it's going to be, with consultation with the Sioux Community Association. It's not just a motion to say, okay, we want more information. There has to be some pieces to this, because again, we'll get more information. We're going to ask more information. So a comprehensive look. What does it mean if the all-weather field was built? What does it mean to the community association? What does it mean for parking on ALR land? There's a lot of questions that got asked around here tonight. That's not going to be just a simple information, a little bit of more information, a complex plan of that entire area. That's what I would like.
I'm happy for your friendly amendment on that.
Okay, so now in terms of you want a complex plan.
Well, when I say complex plan, it doesn't have to be complex in what it costs us. It has to be complex and say, okay, we can park on the ALR land. There's a preliminary question answered for me. Well, then how do we go ahead with that? Where does the horseshoe pitch actually end up being located? From a practical sense. Because now there's a fence in the middle there, and everybody in Suka is going, I was going to say that ape something, but anyway.
Yeah.
But people are asking questions, and I don't even know how it got there.
Okay.
So like, where could it potentially be? What, like, some potentials? Again, Okay, now we're going to do this, and the horseshoe pitch got a fence here, and everybody's angry about that. But let's say at the end of the day, they're going to go here. We can explain that to everybody. We agree to it, not coming here after a fence is halfway up, and we're getting asked. So I would like to see a comprehensive but not expensive plan. It doesn't take a lot of money to draw something out on a map and say, okay, this will work, with answering all those basic questions. Like a very
Okay, so what might, okay.
a high-level view of what we could potentially do.
If I may,
Conceptual.
Your Worship, I just want to clarify one thing with Councillor Pearson. I agree completely with asking the ALR whether we can have permitted use as parking there. My concern with the one comment that you had was around the comprehensive, and I won't even use comprehensive, but the effect of the all-weather field on the entire area and all of that, that gets into a much bigger topic than I think.
Okay, I can
we're
answer
looking
that.
at right
I can
now.
answer that for you.
Okay.
Let's just say we've got a project and it's in a conceptual stage. What would it mean to us if there was an all-weather field over here, the horseshoe pitch would go here, the parking could go here, and the trail could go here? There's 4 components that are, when I say comprehensive, I just mean to something that we could visualize and say, okay, we think this will work. Let's start going ahead with a work plan, because we have to have what we want first, then we get a work plan, then we go to the pricing. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to be going back here and going, oh, well, I don't know why the horseshoe pitch is there or why the trail's on this side of the road. Let's look at it very simply. Comprehensive, or nice field over that side of the road, nice parking over here, horseshoe pitch down there, and trail going through. So a couple of basic questions need to get asked, that's all.
I think the other one to the LR is the multi-use trail
Yes.
piece. And I think in terms of the all-weather field, I think it would be straightforward with the just getting feedback from the community association, how many ball teams, how many soccer teams, what seasons are they playing now? If the all-weather field went ahead, what is that adding for different sports? If it's rugby or hardballs now being played, are they playing there? Are they playing at Sea Park? And just sort of getting that use. Now, realistically, only so many events can happen on the field at one time. It's either going to be a soccer tournament or a ball tournament, not both, because the fields are in use. And then just an estimate on, how many players are there, I think could sort of address sort of that piece in terms of the impact. And then there is park and rides on both sides of the highway in the schools. So school's out in the summer, so that's opening up parking, and there's parking all along Suk River Road as well. So, and then at the same time is just, as you said, is just getting that further clarity on just mapping for the area. Councillor Berger, then Ray?
Yeah, and just to add another sort of log on the fire, when we're talking to ALR, we could even entertain taking a portion of that out of the ALR.
Yeah.
I mean, the estuary, obviously, I agree with staying in the ALR, but all of the road portion of that land, why not ask for an exclusion?
Some more information, Councillor Ray?
And at one meeting, I had raised that there was a ditch on the east side of Suk River Road, which to look at what it would take to turn that area into more parking. Because there's a huge chunk of branches and stuff along the road there, but there's also a ditching along there, and it would open up more parking, not a lot, but it certainly would add. And I had raised that last time about taking a look at that as part of that comprehensive plan for the area.
Okay, so does that cover off what council is looking for? I sort of have the RFQ, construction document, drawings, all-weather field, parking or trail use on the LR, horseshoe pitch potentials, the ditch, ALR exclusion, and a high-level view of these various components. Councillor Casper.
I don't mean to put staff on the spot, but do we have any idea of the timelines associated with this list? We could sort of miss out on an opportunity, to start a project during decent weather. So I'm not going to change my vote or have that influence my vote. I want to have a rough idea when we're going to get the information.
Through you, Your Worship, I kind of see it as two answers. One is if you just want the pricing for, like, related to this project and the details related to this report, what the RFQ looked like, what the contract would look like, a draft contract. If you want that, we can have that for the next meeting. Looking at a larger, bigger plan, it's going to take longer than that. And so there's some timing there, and whether we could even have that for the July meeting or not, I'm not sure. But we certainly would not have that information for the next meeting on the 22nd. The detail related to this, which really allows us to push along with getting some of that design work and detailed work and is kind of the next step going forward. We can have that information at the 22nd, the next meeting, certainly. And then we can go from there, and that will provide some of that information based on the work that they would then be doing. So I hope that answers Councillor Casper's question.
Well, then I sort of recommend that to bring as much back as possible for the next meeting. Councillor Ray is a liaison to the Community Association, can gather some information on the ball and field use now. I think they obviously would have that. Councillor Berger is a director of CPARC and can get more information on the, and so am I, in terms of the multi-use, the field. There's the whole proposal that we can funnel all that back to council. So that's some pieces that would fill that in so staff doesn't have to scramble for that. And then I think from there we can sort of move forward, find a way forward. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, so I will call we have that motion. That's the information that we need. I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so moving along to RA3, the 2014 Statement of Financial Information Report. And there's a motion here that Council approve the 2014 Statement of Financial Information and authorize staff to forward it to the Ministry of Community, Sport and Cultural Development along with the 2014 audited financial statements.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any questions of the information in said report? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is RA4, the 2015 Annual Municipal Report. That is this fine document here. I'd like to thank staff for putting this all together. It's sort of a consolidated report of the year, and they're all posted on the website in PDF form, so you can always go back to incorporation and look at the various projects in terms of what we've done. A lot of work goes into this, so I'd like to thank staff for putting it all together. The suggested action is that Council make the 2015 Annual Municipal Report available for public inspection under Section 97 of the Community Charter, and to have the report available for public inspection at the annual meeting, which is scheduled for July 13, 2015. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Casper. Questions on the motion? And that annual meeting is sort of an annual event that's scheduled every year in July, and so this just sort of meets with our timelines, and we wait for the audited financial statements to come in, so that's where it folds in the way it is. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next piece is the C1, correspondence received June 2nd, 2015 from Uptown Taxi co-founders regarding an application to Passenger Transportation Board. We've had something like this similar in the past, and I believe it was from Bluebird a few years ago, where they had looked to expand the service, and at that time council did not support sort of an out-of-town company coming into Souk. I will share that there is a local operator. We do have a local operator, Souk Harbor Taxi. There is another one that's working to put together a business plan for Souk-based service as well, but of course, so that's sort of in the works as well. But at this point, they're asking us to either endorse or not support this. So, any comments from council? Councillor Ray?
Yes, just a quick comment. Through social media lately, there has been lots of complaints about the efficiencies and not effectiveness, but the efficiencies of just having one local taxi cab. where people have been left stranded for hours out at the 17 Mile Pub. So I think it's good timing that we are looking at a second. I think our population is growing and could probably support a second one.
Okay, would that be like a second soup-based service or something like this where it's sort of coming in from out of town?
You know what? I think people just want to be able to call a cab and get one within about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So whatever way, we definitely need the service.
Councillor Logans?
I know that in some areas, taxis aren't allowed to take more than 4 or 5 passengers, and I just wanted to know if that would apply to our area.
I think it depends on what I've encountered that in Victoria. It depends on the type of vehicle that the driver has. So if he shows up in a car, even though we're comfortably willing to jam into the taxi, the driver won't allow more than what's legal. But if they show up in a van, they can take up more passengers.
So 6 people on page 3.
Yeah, so in this case, they are looking at a van service. And I have signed a letter of support to a local-based company that is also applying for a license that would be specifically SUG operated. In this case, the call would probably come from Victoria. So, really, they'd be waiting. If it's uptown-based and all their references are Victoria-based, if you phone this number, you're still going to have to wait for the cab to come out and to come back. And what I've heard with some out-of-town companies is that they tend to charge you both directions that the taxi's going in because it has to come out to pick you up and then take you. So I've never used that service, but that's kind of what I've heard. Or if you're taking it from Victoria back, you always want to negotiate the fare before you get into it because then they want to charge you. They can't necessarily find a fare back. But anyway, did you have more questions, Councillor Logan?
No, thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, this is an application to the Transportation Board, and they have to put things out, and they do a blanket approach of all municipalities, and it's just because the taxis are licensed, and then that license entitles them to pick up and drop off at certain locations. And I think what we'd said last time, we don't mind people coming into, but they couldn't pick up, and that's one of the things that we looked at. This is specifically targeting a tour type operation. If we read through this, but again, they throw this big blanket. Every municipality on the southern end of the island, and that's what they have to do. That's their process. So
this is the same as the other one.
Information.
This is the same as Blueberry.
Right.
Yeah.
Move receipt.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No action.
We did at that meeting, if I recall, it sent a letter off to the actual entity where we had said that no out-of-town companies could service this area. That is, so they do have that with the Passenger Transportation Board does have that on record. So we can see what happens and just move receipt and see what happens if it goes any further.
That would be my preference
Okay.
until we see what happens with the second application that's coming
Okay,
forth.
so it's been moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded, did Councillor Ray or?
I moved it.
Oh.
Seconded by Pearson.
Okay, and it was the motion to receive?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Councillor Casper?
Right now, we have a letter on file that was in regard to a previous application. And I don't think that it necessarily spoke specifically to the applicant, but we made a broad general statement.
It was a broad general statement.
So, perhaps, yes, receive and file, but I don't have a problem with also, reminding, the organization that we had made a previous statement. Because I don't want to necessarily see that position lost.
Well, they'll find out though from when they submit it, they'll receive that because that would be the case, I believe. So they'd be notified that this motion was on record. Okay, so any question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I-1, correspondence for information. I-1, correspondence received June 2nd from the Sauk Region Chamber of Commerce regarding highway improvements to Sauk Town Centre, and the president from the chamber is here should anyone have any questions.
Move receipt.
Move receipt by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in Councillor Pearson.
I just want to make sure that the members, that the Chamber of Commerce, as well as other businesses, recognize that council is aware of the concerns around the traffic during this construction period.
Yeah, and they are being in discussion with the ministry, and we're waiting for announcements to come out, and we'll be able to share more at that time. Councillor Ray, did you have a comment? Okay, all those in favor, Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. And just to add, because there's two correspondences that speak to the town centre renovations and improvement, just to add to your previous comments that, you know, we are working with the province as well to make this as easy as a transition as we can, and that, you know, there'll be public consultation and all of that. So we recognize as a previous speaker came last week, we recognize the anticipation and anxiety that's going to come with it, but we're doing the best job we can to work with them.
And there are some points, thank you, Councillor Berger, that are on our website right now. So some of them are in terms of Highway 14 being closed to traffic during construction. No, there will not be any closures. There may be periodically single-lane traffic during that period. The traffic management in the downtown core is a very high priority for the project, and access to every business will be maintained throughout construction. They are aware of peak commuter periods of the day, and will be looking at alternative routes to move people throughout town. They're also aware of different events that we have. Large transport and logging trucks will continue to use the Sooke Road alignment. They cannot detour up Church and around, so they still know to go through. The timing, I know that there's been a lot of talk about moving it onwards, but we are looking at just moving ahead as planned. And every effort will be made by the district and the ministry to maximize the effect the road construction will have on business and residents. And so that's all being worked on. There was some discussion of the Royal Bank construction impacting this, but all of their work is within their footprint. We do not expect them to have that, and so forth. So there is significant work occurring, and you'll find it on the website, and more will come forward in time. It's a great opportunity to really push a buy local, support local program to support walking or biking into the core, to experience different ways to get in and out. There are going to be a large number of people working within Sooke at that time that are going to want to get lunch and coffee and some snacks and maybe some groceries before they head home. So I would encourage the Chamber to really embrace this as an opportunity. We are investing in our town. That's a positive piece for the future. We've been waiting for this for a long time, and it's finally happening. We're in alignment now with the province, which has been a long time coming, and it's all been budgeted for. There's no tax increases anyone with a tax notice would have received by now, and so we are full steam ahead. Thank you. I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next piece is correspondence received June 3rd from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. An open letter that went to all mayors, so pass it on for your reading interest. Moved receipt by Councillor Logans and seconded by Councillor Berger. Any discussion on it? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the last one is I3, correspondence received June 4th from the Sooke Fine Arts Society regarding the roundabout project. Similar comments as referenced under I1. Move receipt by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Logans. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We'll call for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Berger. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.